Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today I'm with the CEO and founder of Relentless Media Agency and Muv Martial Arts, Adam Kifer. What's up?
What's up, Matthew? Good to see you, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Good, good to see you too. And I'm glad we're able to schedule this and get you on the books. One of the things I saw the other day was a picture of you at a karate combat
Mm,
competition, and I've been seeing this guy. What's the CEO's name? He's like pretty eccentric. He's got like
awesome.
funny Instagram posts.
Yeah, his name is Awesome.
Yeah, President. That
President
his
Awesome.
actual name?
It's like AZIM, but everyone just calls him Awesome.
Yeah. So if you don't follow, it's like President Awesome on Instagram, and it's called Karate Combat. So tell me like what that is because I see like clips of it, and I see this like eccentric CEO guy, founder, and I'm like, who is this person? Is he Dana White's friend? Not Dana White's friend? I don't know.
He's like
So tell me a little bit about.
Awesome is like brand new to karate
Yeah.
combat, so he just jumped in that role. I think in the last couple months.
Okay.
He is way more. I don't even know who the last president was, but he's like way more crazy, probably attention grabbing. I don't know if it's gonna be good
Yeah.
for the sport or not, but he
Yeah.
definitely has more flair than whoever the last president was. Um, I started following it because Raymond Daniels started fighting in it, and I remember watching Raymond Daniels compete at NASCAR tournaments when I used to compete, and it was just like always a fan of him. And then when I started working with Ross and Ross is in it, I was like, all right, like now I'm definitely going to go follow it. And the whole reason we went out there was to support Ross and his fight. But I think it's good for the industry, honestly, because it's full contact martial arts, almost like full contact continuous fighting, with angled walls that make people fall as they start backing up into them. It's also cool because people will push off the wall and like throw techniques too, which makes
Mm.
it more entertaining. There's only I think 3 seconds on the ground they get, or 5 seconds on the ground maybe, before they're stood up. But I
So
like
can
that
they
they still
tap?
keep like the respect aspect to martial arts with
Mm.
it.
So can they like submit someone on the ground, or is that not really a thing? It's all mainly
It's
striking.
mostly all striking because to submit someone in 5 seconds would be really, really tough. Like
Really
you would have to
difficult.
be like a
Yeah.
G to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, mostly striking. I'm not sure if I like the whole 5 second thing though, because in most cases, when the guy gets knocked down to the ground, he just covers for 5 seconds and will do some up kicks. So it's almost like you get to just beat on a dude for 5 seconds while he's on the ground for the most part. So it'll be
So
interesting to see
how
if that stays.
how is it different than besides the ring? Like the ring is like flat and has these angled walls, right? You said you could like jump off of and kick,
Yep.
or if you back up, you fall, and then you have to fight off your back. So how's that different than Muay Thai?
Um, Muay Thai, you can do sweeps. I don't think you can do elbows in karate combat, and I think you can do knees to like the body. I don't know. I don't know all the rules exactly. So there's certain techniques you can't do in it. You can do sweeps, but I think the main thing is there's just no elbows or knees. Stances are way different than Muay Thai. Also, as far as how
Mm.
everyone's fighting, they're definitely more bladed MMA type fighting style than it is Muay Thai.
Mm. And I know you're training in Muay Thai. I mean, you used to do. Obviously, you competed on the international, or national martial arts circuit. Was it through NASCA, right?
Yeah, I did NASCA, and then we did WPKC was like the international one that I don't even think is around anymore.
Oh, okay. So, what made you decide, or when did you start, and what made you decide to do Muay Thai?
You know what it was? I think for me, I got really into jujitsu for a while, and I just liked how jujitsu is like, hey, you either when you like roll with someone, you're either winning or you're not. Like that, like it's either working or it's not type of thing. Where I think a lot of traditional martial arts are just very subjective to if you're actually a good martial arts, like a good martial
Yeah.
artist. Where it's like you against the other person. If you're not a good martial artist, you're just going to lose every time, or you're going to get submitted every time. That appealed to me about Muay Thai as well because I did point fighting like growing up. So first time I did Muay Thai, I actually did better than I thought because they're not used to side kicks. But as soon as they started leg kicking me, I was like, "What the hell is this? Like, this is a new thing." And for me, it sort of shocked me, like how much a leg kick could affect me and like just throw me
Mm.
off like what I would normally do. So I think that's what piqued my interest in doing Muay Thai. Now I do. It's like a combination of like Muay Thai, MMA, like kickboxing is what I train with my coach Randy on. But I just like the element of number one hitting things. I also just like the element of being able to tell, like, just for you sparring against someone or going up a match against someone else, like, are you actually as good as you think you are? Like,
Mm.
or what flaws are being exposed? I think that's what's been appealing to me about it. I also like the fact that it's very realistic. Like if you're gonna fight, like if you ever have to defend yourself, you got to know how to cover, protect yourself. You need to understand distance, timing, what angles to be at to throw certain techniques more efficiently. Like all of that stuff, I think directly translates to being able to protect yourself more so than a lot of. And I'm not trying to crap on traditional because I've done traditional my whole life,
Yeah, just say
but
it. Who cares? Yeah.
yeah, just more than a lot of traditional arts, I should say.
Yeah, so do you feel like the popularity of martial arts is going more that direction, like Muay Thai, mixed martial arts,
Yeah,
jujitsu sort of thing?
I think it's already leaning that way, and I think it's gonna do more so over the next few years. I know one championship is coming in to do a bunch of US-based events next year. So you're gonna have like Muay Thai fighting only. You're gonna have just Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappling matches, and then you also have the MMA matches as well. So and kickboxing they do. So it's gonna be a more variety of like martial arts, professional martial arts fights than I think what we're used to seeing in the US because most of the professional kickboxing are all overseas now. So I think that will be good for the art as well and for martial arts. But I think that's also going to help just push more people in that direction. And if you look at the number of dads that are really into MMA right now, it's sort of natural for us to think that it's going to go that way.
Yeah, I watched my first one championship competition the other day. It was on, like, Amazon Prime or something. Did
Yeah,
you see that?
I didn't see this last one,
So,
but I've watched a few.
yeah, I never watched it before. I watch UFC all the time, but I never watched one championship, and I didn't realize that there's a first round insane, knockout basically in every single fight.
Oh,
It's like,
that card,
imagine the
that card, yes, everyone was getting knocked out that card.
I assumed that that was, like, at every time, like,
No,
every fight. It was like every fight was, like, first round knockout, first round knockout. It's, like, the best part of UFC, like, the part that, like, everyone goes nuts for and stands up and goes
yep.
crazy. I was like, "This is, like, happening every fight. This is, like, the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life."
Well, you gotta think they're doing Muay Thai with, like, 4-ounce gloves. Like,
Yeah.
that's not much protection, and then, like, I also think the striking of one is a little bit elevated compared to UFC, just overall from, like, top to bottom of the roster, because a lot of those guys come from, like, a professional Muay Thai background, so their striking is just, like, pretty damn legit as far as what they can
Mm,
do. It's almost like having, like, an
mm.
army of Alex Pereiras, like, out there.
Yeah. So, when you decided to do Muay Thai, how old were you when you first started?
I was a grown ass man, like,
Grown ass man.
yeah,
Okay.
probably
Like
4 or 5 years ago.
okay. And when you first started, did you think you'd have a leg up because you did traditional martial arts, you did point sparring, or did you go in there
Ooh.
thinking
You know what? I think because I did jujitsu before that, I went in like humble as hell to Muay Thai. Because like
yeah,
jujitsu, when I went in, I was like, "Oh, I'm a black belt. I'm the shit. I'm gonna do great." And
yeah,
like the first month, I was all rolling with white belts, and I was tapping a bunch of people out, and my confidence was through the roof. And then the first time I had to like roll with like an upper belt, I got like tapped like every 5 seconds when I was rolling with
yeah,
them, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know shit." So I think
yeah,
that humbled me. So when I went into Muay Thai, I just like went in as a student, and I'm like pretty much erased everything I knew from my mind so I could start over
mm.
or tried to at
Yeah,
least.
I started jujitsu probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I started because I was going to, the karate store, like Asia World of Martial
Mm,
Arts, and I was buying swords. I was buying, like, 75 swords, right? Like, the foam ones,
yep.
and some guy's like, "Why are you buying 75 swords?" And I'm like, "Oh, we, like, teach karate. We're doing, like, a sword kata. We practice smashing the bags and stuff." He's like, "Oh, that's cool. You ever tried jujitsu?" I was like, "No." And he's like, "Why don't you come to my school?" And I was like, "Huh, I've been thinking about trying another style. Alright, I'll go." And I just assumed that I'd be, like, maybe not great, but I assumed I'd be, like, a little bit better. Like, I've been doing
Sure.
karate my whole life, and I really was maybe, like, a tiny bit better than, like, the average beginner. Like, if you wrestled in high school, you're definitely way better than me,
Yes, I agree.
right? And so, like, it was so humbling, and I'm like, "Damn." And, like, now I know when I walk in there, like, I I I know I'm gonna get my ass kicked by most of the people there, and I'm like, and I'm okay with it, but it brought me back to being a white belt. I think all those people that have done traditional martial arts most of their life, you should try something where you're going head to head with
100%.
someone, so you actually feel it, and it makes me a much better teacher too. Just like a better martial artist, better teacher, better everything.
Yeah, I think we have a thing in our industry where people have like stopped progressing themselves with their training. And I
Yeah.
think as a result, they only end up training with their students, which isn't actually helping them to ever be humbled or elevated or suffer really in their training. So I love that you're doing jujitsu, and I think every school owner should go do something different where they're not the best person in the room. And because I think there's so much to learn just from that experience of going through that.
Yeah, I know one of the big things for you guys and, for us too, and I think we kinda honestly came to the conclusion around the same time as you guys, is that our curriculum needs to be updated, right? And I know
Hmm.
you've been pushing that a lot,
Yeah.
right? It needs to be updated. And, we talked about that. What I think I remember, like, we were trying to figure out how to do it, and then you brought it up at one of your Relentless, conferences
The summit.
in
Yeah.
Arizona, and I was like, yeah, the summit. And I was like, "Oh, damn, he's doing this too. Okay, great." Like, we need more people to do that because, like, A, it'll elevate the entire martial arts
Hmm.
industry, but B, like, it'd be good to have someone to bounce ideas off of because, like, I was teaching I'm like a white slash maybe blue belt at the time. I'm still a blue belt now, but I was teaching our instructors, like, basic jujitsu moves, so that way we can teach it to our students.
Mm.
Simple stuff
Sure.
like break fall, right? Bump and roll, right? Simple things that they need to know, and now we've updated our curriculum. I think we're still figuring out, like, what's gonna be really good, what we're gonna keep, what we're gonna leave, but I remember, like, we moved, we took away, like, weapons katas because what we
Mm.
did was we looked at how much time people were actually practicing weapons, like, we actually, like, went through class times to see how much we were actually teaching, and it was something like an hour a month.
Yep.
Like, and I was like, "How the hell are they gonna get any good at this? Like, there's no way."
Mm.
And now what we do is we do what's called game film reviews. So that's honestly my favorite thing that we do. And we watch class. Like, I meet with either a head instructor or program director once a week, and we watch a full recording of class with audio, and we go through it like an NFL
Love that.
player watches their game film, right? And we, oh, look at this person. Why are they not doing the movement right? And then we'll switch over the camera to the parent. The parent's in like this, right? And they're thinking, why am I paying,
Mhm.
$300 a month for this crap, right? And they get to see kind of frame by frame, and that's a big ego hit too, because sometimes these people that have taught for a long time, and I'll do it for myself too. Like, I'll hop in there and teach, like, "Oh, guys, I'm gonna teach a class today, and we're gonna pick it apart later." And, like, we'll just go through that so they can see it too. And there's obviously a lot of things that I mess up as well. So I
I
think
love that.
more people, yeah, I think more people. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh, I want to see what that looks like," if you just email me, Matthew at W Your Dojo, or on Instagram, at Black Belt Brenner one, I'll happily send you recordings of it so you can copy it. Because I think more people need to be doing that. Like, if you're going to be a professional football
Mhm.
player or basketball player, you watch film.
Yep.
Tom Brady watches more film than anyone. Why aren't we watching film of ourselves teach?
Well, it's
Right.
funny, I do that with my own
So,
training where I record it when I do my striking training, and then
yeah.
the whole reason I record it is so I can go back and see what I'm doing that sucks ass in practice and fix it for the next time. And you're absolutely right. It should be done with classes consistently as well. I've noticed that a lot of times my coaches like think they're just like kicking ass on every single class, which I love that confidence. But then I'll show them like footage from the class, and like, I didn't realize the kids were standing still that long. Oh my god, I can't believe I did
Yeah.
that. And it's just like sometimes they just need the self realization instead of us just pointing out things all the time.
Yeah. Here's what I want to know. Maybe you might know the answer to this. Is I want to know the correct, and I really have to do like a full study of it and look at a lot of film. Is like the best balance between movement time and talk time. Because we
Mm.
have some instructors I know talk too much. So, like, with them, I'll watch the class and I'll be like, "Okay, this was a 40-minute class, and they only moved for 19 minutes."
Ugh.
Like, that's obviously not enough time, right? But they didn't realize that when they're teaching it, right? The
Yeah.
class felt amazing. But it's like, okay, what can we do to make this class faster? Okay, we had a 6-minute chunk here. If we just like switch how we transition between the lines, and blah 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 blah. And I'm curious, like, what like should be like the good industry standard for that number? Like, what's a good movement time? Let's say out of an hour, is it 50 minutes out of an hour that they're moving, or should it 45 minutes? Like, what are the best people doing? Do you have any
Yeah.
idea?
I think, man, that's a hard thing to put a number on for a couple of reasons. Cause I think talking can be valuable if it's like there's a reason behind it. I think some coaches just
Yeah.
talk to talk and to over explain. for whatever reason. We teach our instructors that like if you're doing an explanation of a drill, it should be under 2 minutes, and then they should
Mm,
be following along and doing the movements with you immediately afterwards. So that way they're actually kinetically learning it instead of just hearing you talk about the drill.
right.
And then even like the way that we do our mat chats, we switch that up so it's not just kids like sitting down crisscross. Like we football huddle now for mat chats, and then like that way, even the formation sometimes, like when we're in a huddle and the coach is talking, it doesn't seem like downtime to parents. But when the kids are sitting crisscross applesauce on their dots and you're talking, seems like downtime. Like this seems like you're bringing the
Mm.
team together, you're rallying them up and getting ready for class type of thing. So we even notice just how the talk is being delivered matters just as much as how much time they're spending talking, if that
Ooh,
makes
I
sense.
love that. So are they actually standing, like, putting their hands in like a team would huddle?
So we'll either
Or
hands in, we'll have, or we'll just huddle up like hands around each other. The coach will deliver the huddle at the beginning, and then we end with an on three that goes along with whatever the talk was about. And
okay, so you do,
we
like,
do
1,
that
2,
instead of
3
a student
break?
creed now. That's just how we start class.
Cool. So are they saying a student creed or they're not saying a student creed at
No,
all?
no creed at all. We
No.
just start class right away with the huddled, the on three, and then we go and get things done.
Mm. So what other layers have you pulled back out of your classes to make them simpler and more effective?
Ooh, good question. Line drills, like line drills, I think suck for most most of anything. Um, when we went through all that class footage, we had like 75 hours of class footage from different schools submitted. Like the one thing I noticed is every school that was heavy on line drills had the least amount of reps that their students were getting. And there was times when I'd pick one kid in line. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna count how many reps that kid does during the time of this drill. It's like a 7 minute
Yeah.
drill, and the kid did 5 reps on the bag in 7 minutes. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, this is showing me that how inefficient this is.
It's
Um,
embarrassing too when you watch it, right? You're like, "Oh my god, what are we
yeah,
doing?"
so if you look at, like we have a whole drill library that we made for our instructors to, like, pull from. When you get to the line drill section, there's only 2 line drill options to choose from, and it's line drills where the kids are actually, like, doing reps as they move, and not so much just, like, standing in front of a bag, taking turns type of thing. So that was one of the big things that we like, as a big no-no for us is line drills.
So what did you replace it with instead of line drills? What are you doing instead?
Uh, we do lots of partner training, pad drills, using multiple partners in class, doing different formations where like I think most martial arts schools it's face forward and punch forward and kick forward like the whole freaking time. We have shadow boxing drills that we do. We have drills where they'll just be in a different formation in a circle doing the same techniques. We do a good amount of parent involvement in our classes too, especially the beginner and like the mighty movers classes where we'll have the parents actually come out and teach them how to pad hold for their kids.
Mm,
That's been received really, really well from the parents because now the parents are more confident at helping their kids practice at home because they understand how the pad movement is supposed to work for whatever combos that they're learning. So I think that part's really big. And then we just like really looked at it and said what's absolutely needed in class because part of the reason we got rid of the student creed is when I watched 99% of martial arts schools do the student creed as a bunch of bored ass kids with their hands behind their back, like just repeating without any thought process behind the repetition of the words that they're saying. And to prove this, when we had a student creed, I was like, I'm not going to say the creed with you guys. What's the first part of the creed? And people could get the first part of the creed started because they're used to that. And I'm like, all right, what's the second part? And they just stare at me. And these are like black belts that have been doing the creed for like 4 or 5 years, every single class.
yeah.
And I was like, well, is the creed actually like doing what it was meant to do if they can't even remember it on their own? Because if they can't remember it on their own, they're not remembering it when they leave class. So I
Mm,
was like, that's a chunk of time that we can get back. Um, Also, we were doing like 10-minute warm-ups consistently with stretching. We took stretching out of our classes, honestly. And it's made zero difference on the flexibility of our students. So we got rid of stretching. We just do more of an active warm-up type of thing. Like there's some active stretching, I guess you could say is involved in that, but not just like where you'd like hold the splits for 30 seconds back in the day or like we got rid of all of that part of it. And that was from me doing training my own and realizing like I've had really good training sessions with zero stretching involved. Like sometimes afterwards I'll stay and stretch, but I don't think it's needed. At least the way that we've been doing it in our industry. I think you can just do an active warm up and your students are ready to go and start hitting pads and stuff. Um, the other thing for us is we got way more emphasis on teaching pad holding with our students and how to pad hold correctly. I remember watching some old footage of our classes when we were first like doing Muay Thai. Like the pad holding for the kids was like hesitant high off timed high fives. essentially.
Mm,
So now they actually look much more like trainers for their age, I should say, not like professional trainers, but like they look more like
mm,
trainers for their age. Um, and that's been really helpful as well because now the kids are getting the rhythm and timing down while they're holding pads, along when they're actually doing the combo as well. So it's not just like a stand and hold thing anymore. It's more active pad holding, which is keeping them more active and keeping their brain more active as well throughout the class.
mm. I'm assuming in your welcome package or equipment pack, they get pads they could use for at home, right?
So we sell them. We don't have them included or required. But typically, what we do is we do a pad holding seminar once a quarter, and when they pay for the seminar, they get the pads with it, and that's when most of the parents end up getting pads.
So do you sell an equipment pack when people start? Like that includes gloves or whatever, or you don't do
So
that?
we do it really different. So let's say when they enroll, let's say our normal down payment's 199. Part of the incentive for them to enroll that day is we lower the down payment to just pay for what we're giving them as far as equipment goes. So like it's $89 and they get their jersey through the way for classes, hand wraps, and boxing gloves. And that $89 pays our cost with a little bit of profit. And now they have all the gear they need for the first year. And then
Mm,
year two, there is an equipment pack that's like shin guards, headgear, mouth guard that they get, but we don't discount it. It's required. I think our industry we got in the habit of like discounting gear when they buy it as a package. That doesn't happen in any other sport, I realized. Once I had kids,
mm.
there's no discount when you buy like all your kids' football gear at once. It's like, no, it's needed. You just have to buy it.
Yeah. So, why not give them all the gear in the beginning? Why give them some in the beginning and some later?
They don't use it all at the beginning. And
Oh, okay. So it's
and
just
by
not
the
all stuff they
time
need.
like they'll do light sparring to the body within their first year, and then they go into regular sparring in year two in our system currently. I don't know if it's going to stay that way, but so their headgear is just going to be sitting in their bag for a year, and they're probably gonna
Mm,
some kids are gonna outgrow it by the time they end up using it. Because that was the
and
other thing. Like back in the day when I worked with my brother and my dad at their schools, that we get complaints about all the time is like they'd buy all their gear at once. And then if they didn't use all the gear at once, parents are like, well, why the hell did I have to buy it all at once? Like if we're not going to use
right.
this for with weapons, that was a big thing too. It's like I had to buy like commas that I used for 3 months out of a 4 year journey to black belt. It's like why do I need commas for 3 months of training?
Yeah, good
So we're
point. So
trying
you're
to
still doing weapons, or you moved away from that?
no weapons, no forms. It's all combos, footwork, basics, obviously, um, sparring, a lot of sparring. But yeah, we don't do any forms. No, like we don't do any like traditional chamber anything anymore.
Is that is that will you do that in, like, special workshops? Are we gonna do a comma workshop or
No,
no?
it doesn't really go along with like anything else in our brand. And then if I think about scaling, I'm going to have people then that are instructors that besides knowing the basic curriculum really well, that also have some work with weapons, have some work. And to me, that's too much of a barrier for scaling because I think the hardest part of scaling martial arts schools is the instructor part of it and
Yeah,
getting instructors, and I think it's more like just getting them to know the curriculum is one of the biggest barriers. So when we were thinking about how we're going to scale move, we're like we need to remove as many barriers as possible that don't align with our vision over the next 10 years. And for us, that's anything that's going to slow down the instructor training process we wanted to remove. And then also like if our whole focus really is more athlete development side of things with the martial arts training. So like we want physical transformations happening with our students. And it's like the more things we just add and sprinkle in there, the more it takes away from our main focus.
mm. Yeah, I think if the martial arts industry as a whole became more product focused and making the product so good,
Mhm.
and not all the little bells and whistles, then, like, if your kid throws a roundhouse kick and it's like a devastating round kick, right?
Yes.
Or devastating cross, you don't need to do all the sales processes, right? Like, that's one thing that jujitsu has pretty good. Like, most jujitsu
Mhm.
schools are not good at selling. Like, according to sales process, they kind of suck. But
I
if,
agree.
if it's really good training, they just kind of knock on the door and say, "Hey, how do I sign up?" Right? Like when I went to go sign up with that guy, it was like I had to like email them like 3 times, like, "How do I pay?" And they're like, "Oh yeah." Now part of that is probably not the best business practices, right? But I kept on following up because I wanted to do it because I had a good time in the mat and I thought it was
Mhm.
valuable,
Yeah, I think
right?
that makes such a big difference, honestly. And I'm glad you brought that up. Like where I train is the MMA lab in Phoenix, and when you go in there, it's all these dudes that look like athletes. They all look jacked. They're all like kicking the shit out of pads and heavy bags, and you can tell even when you're in there, just hearing the coaches speak and how they speak. Everything is very strategic. There's intent behind why they do every single thing that they do throughout the class, and I think that's missing from a lot of martial arts schools. I go there and I feel like I have to perform like an athlete because everyone around me is athletes at that gym.
Mm,
Whereas I think
mm,
there's a lot of martial arts schools you can go into and you don't feel like you need to perform any certain way because there's no standards or expectations on the floor. Um, and I think parents start to realize that too. Like I think if you have a dad watching class and he sees his kids punching an air for the entire class, he's not getting confident that his son can actually protect
mm,
himself. I think you need some attitude behind the strikes that we're teaching.
mm. So how does being a dad change your perspective of how you see running martial arts schools, like
Uh,
being a dad yourself?
that was the start of my perspective change was being a dad because like
Mm,
we were more sport karate focused like before we switched to Muay Thai, meaning we were forms weapons like chop punches, spin chop punches, jump kicks, all that stuff.
yeah.
And I did that because that's what I used to compete in and that's what I knew. But as I was watching my first son out on the mat doing chop punches and like doing it with good technique for what was expected, I was just like, man, if I was like, if a jujitsu kid his age went against him, I'm like, my son would get his ass kicked. I was like,
Yeah.
if a Muay Thai kid or MMA kid went against him, I'm like, my son would get his ass kicked. And I was like, thinking about that as a parent, I'm like, so does that make what he's doing right now valuable to me or not? And the answer was no. And I remember there was one class I was sitting with my wife watching him, and then I just like turned to her. I was like, man, I was like, I think we should put him in jujitsu. And I'm sitting in my own school saying that we should put him in something else. And that was sort of the realization moment that I was like, well, if I'm thinking that and my wife is thinking that, and we're watching our son in our own business, I'm like, I wonder how many other parents in the audience are thinking that. And it was funny because as soon as we stopped doing forms and switched to more like stand up striking, the number of parents that were like, is our child going to have to do forms again? And we're like, no. They're like, oh, thank God. It was like it was so weird to see that response from someone that had taught and trained forms his entire life to see the parents' perspective actually come out, like their true, authentic like feedback. And then we had parents be like, "Hey, we love this place, but if you guys go back to doing forms, like we would rather not continue." It
Mm.
was like that big of a deal, and what they saw the realism behind what we're teaching now compared to what it used to be.
So did that when you first took it away, was it part of you that, like, hurt your soul because that's what you grew up with? Or were you, like, happy to
No,
leave?
I think honestly, it hurt the soul of some of our instructors more than me. Because some of the
Mm.
instructors that were like active competitors and that like just absolutely loved forms, I was more heartbroken for them because I remember being their age and just being like, all I wanted to do was forms all the time and jump kicks and tricks and all that stuff. So I could connect with them, and we lost a couple instructors because of it in the transition over that um, just were like so hurt by not having forms that like they sort of lost their passion for it. And I get it. I have no hard feelings against them because at their age, I probably would have had the exact same reaction to it. But then we also got a much larger buy-in from other instructors because they could see that what we were teaching had a more of a direct impact to kids being able to protect themselves.
Mm. So, we have the same issue, right? We had not as many students leave, but definitely had some students leave because we're not doing kata, and that's what the parent grew up
Mm,
learning, and they're like, "Oh, why aren't we doing," they're not doing bow staff anymore. We're like, "Well, we're gonna have," and we're doing special clinics, like, once every 3
okay.
months or 4 months, where it's just like a one day, I think it's like a 3-hour event or something like that.
Mm.
Um, so we're still kinda keeping it, but it might go away. Maybe that's our transition period, right?
Yeah,
We'll see.
that's smart.
Um but we definitely had instructors leave and they just couldn't get over that. And I'm like, "Listen, like, we watch classes, we know this is gonna be a hard transitions, but this could be better long term." But
Hmm.
because that's part of their identity and that's what they learned, now that has to be what someone else learned,
Sure.
right? And one of the things I loved, but one of the speakers, oh my god, I'm forgetting his name. Oh, it's like one of your close friends who designed the curriculum,
Oh, Jotty.
Todd, yeah, Jotty.
Yep.
One of the things he said is, tradition is being bullied by old people or dead people,
Yeah. Peer pressure
right?
from
And,
dead
like, when he
people.
said that, yeah, 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 peer thank you, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, it's peer pressure from dead people, right? And it's like, That blew my mind when I heard that, like, yes, like,
Yep.
that is the exact sentiment that we need to share with our instructors, but if you can go back and you were gonna make that transition again with your instructors,
Yeah.
would you do something differently, or would you say something differently so you wouldn't lose them?
I don't know. I think that we would have lost them either way because I think with a curriculum change like that, a culture change also comes with it. And like the culture at our when we were doing traditional compared to now, it's totally different at the school in in a better way. It's just our mindset with our students. I don't call them students anymore. The mindset with the athletes is more of an athlete mindset than it used to be. Where before it's a lot of kids just like
Mm,
going through the motions and trying to memorize stuff. Where now it's like, no, we're going to actively train. We're going to go through some suffering together, and we're all going to come out of it better as a result. The culture shifted to that as well. So we also had probably some coaches that were getting lazy with their own training that didn't like the intensity of the new curriculum and how it's trained compared to what they used to do. And I think we would have lost those people regardless um,
mm,
with the curriculum change. Uh, we student wise, we lost one student with the curriculum change out of like 325 members. One quit because of that. So um, I think we did a pretty good job going through it. We also rolled it out very slowly. Like we had it's like, all right, if you're a white belt right now, you're going to be the first group of students doing the new curriculum. And then as they moved up, the curriculum changed with them. So they were the first group all the way up to black belt learning that new curriculum. So that way it wasn't a total shock to the people that had been training already anyway.
mm. Yeah, I think we might have been a little too abrupt with changing the curriculum because I was excited by it. I was like, "This is gonna be
Yeah,
great," and because of that overzealousness, I think I think we probably lost more people than we should have. I could say, even like the one location that I mainly manage, we probably lost like 10 or
okay.
something. And not a tremendous amount, but definitely like, some of those students were people who've been with us for a really long time,
Mm,
right? And it really, really hurt. But I was like, okay, well, if we're gonna be better, this decision is gonna be better for me 10 years from now. So who cares if it's painful for
agreed.
10 minutes, right?
Agreed.
Um, so now that you have moved and you have the one location, I think for right now, right?
Yeah, MX
Or
is
you
getting
doing
ready to rebrand probably in the next 90 days. So that'll be a move
rebrand what?
location. And then we have a third one we're in build out phase right now.
Oh, rebrand the one you already have, you mean?
Yep.
So is that are you gonna change like all the colors, how everything looks? That's a
Yeah.
really pretty school.
They're already running the new curriculum there and everything, so it's really just a physical rebrand that'll be happening.
Okay, cool. So are you doing like a lot of construction work or paint work? Like what are you actually doing to rebrand?
So we're gonna do the rebrand in 2 phases just to be, like, super cost effective. So the first is pretty much we're gonna repaint everything orange, put new wall vinyls on that match the branding, and switch out the signage. And then we'll probably wait about 3 months after that to do a full rebrand where we bring in, like, the new AV system. We have a whole wall that's like a countdown timer in there. We have actual spotlights in the lighting so you can spotlight, like, 1 kid on the floor to have them show
Yeah, I've
off.
seen that. So how's that has that been working well? Is it effective or as useful as you thought it was gonna be, or is it harder to use? I'm just curious, like the utility. I thought I was like, I saw that, I was like, that first of all, it's funny as shit. Second of all, it's super effective, but I'm curious in the moment, like
Yeah, so
how easy it is to use.
you know what's interesting is our AV company that we use, they're from out of state, and they're on like a I don't know. Well, actually, this isn't more AV, but for the spotlights, we have a custom mat that we ordered for this gym that hasn't arrived yet, and it comes in like January 15th, and it has octagons printed for every single kid on the mat. So we don't have all the spotlights set up yet because we want to make sure that they're perfectly placed over the octagons on the mat. So right now we just have a single spotlight that would bring the kid up and have him show off in
Okay,
the
so
class.
spotlight in front of the mat, they come up, spotlights
Yes,
on
but
them.
it's going to change. So the whole front row will have spotlights over it that we can control from a tablet, and
Cool.
it'll pretty much turn off all the other lights except our like colored LED lights we have in the ceiling. So almost like a laser tag feel with like a
Yeah.
spotlight on the front row, or even a single person in the front row. And then when we run
Where did
line
you
drills, that's what we'll use, where they'll come up, hit the pads under the spotlight, and then go to the end.
Is there another business you took a lot of inspiration from when starting this? Like, I know one of your partners was Orange Theory. Was it that you got inspiration from? Was it from Rumble,
No,
boxing? Like, where
I think Rumble had some good inspiration elements as far as how they change up the experience for their members and like the lighting. I thought Rumble was probably one of the best as far as fitness experience classes wasn't the hardest class, wasn't like the most sore I've ever been after it, but like just like cool factor, like they did a pretty damn good job. And really what we got from them is sort of like the lighting part of the training floor. And then the second element is they have a projection above the mirrors when you train that shows like what combo you're doing on it as you do it.
Yeah.
And then it
Yeah,
starts to
super
like
cool.
animate as you go through the class. So that sort of inspired us for the countdown timer wall because it's a projected wall that has animations on the countdown timers. And then right now we have class plans on TVs that the instructors can see, but we're actually going to be installing vertical TVs across the floor as well that have what they're actually doing in class. There's a physical example on the TVs of someone doing that. So now you need less instructors per class because you don't need someone up in front demonstrating the whole time. They can just go along with the TV after it's taught, and then they can follow along to that. And that was probably more of like a inspiration from F45 because they have that
Mm,
for their fitness model. And as far as
yeah,
aesthetics and stuff, there wasn't anything that I loved that I saw. We pulled from multiple concepts. So I was a lot from like Nike stores. I was looking at a lot of like how they have design aspects set up. Um, some of
like
it
what?
was honestly us using a graphic designer that knew nothing about the martial arts industry because she didn't know what the rules were. So she would just do whatever
Yeah,
she thought looked best, and then we're like, "Well, we're gonna figure
yeah,
out how to make this work. So let's do it."
yeah. That's funny. I hired an interior designer for a new location, and I was like, she's like, "Well, what do you usually do?" I'm like, "I don't care what you usually do.
Mm,
Just tell us what you think looks cool."
yeah,
And it turned out pretty terrible.
good.
Or we didn't use like I would say we didn't use like 60%. Like I said, I was like it just I thought it was gonna look super cool and I was really excited. And then like when we actually got all the graphics back, I'm like, this is not
Yeah, we had an
what
architect
like
that has some good ideas and then could not execute any of the ideas that she came up with. So I actually found out we did better when I sort of removed her more and just was like, this is what I want. And then me talking to the contractor and us sourcing out the price for it to make it actually work according to the budget.
yeah.
That worked back best. And I created like a slide deck full of like my favorite things from like retail areas, my favorite things from lobbies of different places. And we just sort of worked off that to sort of create what Move is. And there's even things from this first location that I don't like that I'm like, all right, the Mesa location, we're gonna do this differently, do this differently, do this differently.
Mm. I think what's important, like you said it, you kind of mentioned this before, is some of those things that you change, like you might change later, and that's okay,
Yep.
right? Like even curriculum. I was listening to Lex Friedman with was it Lex or I think so with Jeff Bezos,
Mm,
and he was talking about the idea of a one way door or a two-way door decision. A one-way door is the decision you make that there's no going back to that door.
yep.
Once you make that decision, there's no possible way you can change it. And a two-day door way door is like okay, you can see what's on the other side of that door and be like, oh, that's not what I want, and then you can go back through it. And it's like that's like, those decisions
Yes.
you should make like quicker, right? And so often, I think we think of decisions as one-way doors, but if we don't like it, we can go back, right? Or if it's a one-way door decision, we have to be super careful, especially for him. He's building like, it's like spaceships, right? So if he
Yeah.
decides to build this engine that works off a certain type of, hydrogen or something, then like that's how it has to be. If he changes that decision, it could bankrupt them later,
Yes.
right? So I really like that concept, especially when you're trying lots of different new things. Whenever I see you guys posting on Facebook or I attend the summit, I'm always like energized by you guys. So
That's
I feel
awesome. I
like you
appreciate that.
guys are, yeah, no, I really do, and I feel like you guys are kind of like the helping push the industry forward. I think we've been trying to do that for a while, but then of course we'll get ideas from you guys or get ideas from Rumble like we do. Like we do the same thing, right? We'll go to any kind of fitness boutique boxing, like maybe
Yep.
Barry's. Like, okay, what are they doing around here? We'll take pictures and like, we'll talk to the
Barry's has some good
instructors,
design
right?
aesthetics too.
Yeah, very good. I mean, listen, if people are going to pay $50 to $60 for a drop-in class, like, and they're going to do that, like, just like whenever they feel like, they got to have good classes,
Yes.
right? Or if it's the mom that's higher income that, drives a Range Rover, she's going to expect a higher level of service or a high
Mhm.
level of feel. She can't walk into a place where it's like a smelly mat and like, people are unkempt and, they're just kind of doing whatever, right?
Yeah, I think the worst
Uh,
place you can go for inspiration for all that stuff is look inside our industry. Like when people
yeah,
post
you
in
got to go
Facebook
out.
groups, they're like, "Can you guys post pictures of your pro shop so I can get inspiration for my retail area?" I'm like, "No,
Yeah, like
like go
why?
post anywhere else. Don't post here."
Yeah, exactly, and, like, I'm guilty of that too, like, I'm not saying, like
Well, yeah, I've
like,
done it
I
too.
definitely yeah. So now that you're running you obviously have the agency side, you have the move side. What what's, like, the biggest thorn in your side? Like, what's the biggest thing that's a pain in the ass that you didn't anticipate?
Oh god. There's a lot. No. um,
Well, of course,
I think,
I would hope so.
man, I can go like 50 different ways. I think people is always going to be one of the hardest parts of just keeping everyone happy, making sure everyone's trained up. Especially, I think it's honestly easier with our martial arts group managing like multiple locations. You just bring them all in and train them together. But when we have multiple companies that do different things, that's when the people think it's more complicated, and you need people like Kelly Murray on your team to help handle a lot of that. So I think that's always going to be a challenge, is just growing, developing, and helping them to develop not only in their role but also just as human beings, and then helping them also navigate through personal shit that happens in their lives that could also affect the business side of things. um, that's probably, I think, the hardest thing in all of business. I think the second part of it is, I think when you're opening a lot of new business at the same time, the number of checks you're writing on a daily basis without seeing like an immediate return, I think when you first start doing that, that gets stressful as hell. But if you're thinking 5 years in the future, you're like, well, this check isn't really going to matter because I'm going to get a return on my investment. But it's constantly putting yourself sort of in that future mindset of like, all right, even though I wrote a check for 60,000 yesterday and 30,000 today, like I know it's going into something that's going to pay me off passive income down the road. I think that's another element. And then not a hard one, but just like a good learning process I'm going through right now is just estate planning, and making sure that we have everything set up and legally protected as much as possible. So if someone sues one entity, they can't go after another, or they can't sue me and then go after an entity, or vice versa. So
Yeah.
getting all of that right now is probably the biggest learning curve that I'm going through, which is a great learning curve to experience.
Well, don't you have just an attorney for the most part cover all that, like an estate planning attorney?
So yeah, that's who I'm working with, and it's Taylor Welch, one of my mentors, is the one that like really made this important to me. But he's just like, hey, as you continue to scale and grow, he's like, people are just gonna see you. He's like, it'll be for the dumbest stuff ever, but he's like, you're gonna get sued so much as you continue to grow. So he's like,
I'm gonna sue you after the
yeah,
podcast.
I'm like, he's like, asset
Yeah.
protection is a must right now. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we are working with an estate planning attorney, but I also like just being educated on how all of that works as well. So
Mm.
I'm almost having him teach it to me like he's training an employee as he goes and
Yeah.
sets up everything.
Oh, okay. That's all that way you know how to do it.
Yeah, and I'm really big on understanding the why behind certain things, because I love trusting experts, but I've also had in the past when like I feel like it should go another way, but I'm like, you know what, I should just listen to the expert. And then after the fact, I was like, man, we should have gone with what I thought was the best way instead of going this way. So balancing out like what I know well and what they know well, and all of
Yeah.
that is always a journey.
Trust but verify,
Yes.
right? And I think a lot of times that the things that I'll either save money on, whether it's through taxes or financial planning, is when I bring it to my account, not when she brings it to me, right?
Yes.
It's rarely that she kind of says, "Oh, you gotta do this one thing." It's like usually it's like, "Oh, I talked to this other business owner who runs a shoe store. He runs 15 shoe stores downtown, and he told me he does this. Can I do that?" And she looks it up and goes, "Oh, yeah, okay, I guess so." And I'm like, "Oh, great, thanks for telling me about the 15 grand I could have saved like by doing this one thing,"
Mm,
right? Whether it's like, have you ever heard of the Augusta rule?
yes. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, the Augusta rule, and for those who are listening that don't know, basically, you if you have any events at your house, you could write off your house. I think it's for 2 weeks of average rent. That would so let's say you're gonna rent like a conference room in a hotel, and that conference room would cost 10 grand for 2 weeks. You could write yourself a check to the business to your house for any events you have at your house for 10 grand, and
Yep.
then you get tax savings on that. Right? Or like I'm sure you do this is like make sure if you have kids, you pay your kids,
Yeah.
right?
Then I have it go
Do
directly
income
into like
spreading.
an IRA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, an IRA and sit on it. Don't put it into crypto like I did. That's a terrible idea. I mean, I don't have kids, but for
Yeah.
that was a bad decision. So what is something that people don't know about you?
That's a good ass question.
Yeah.
Um, I am super introverted, like extremely introverted. I feel like whenever I tell someone that, they don't believe me. I'm just very good at like
Yeah,
forcing myself to be an extrovert when needed. But like
yeah.
if I have a free weekend, I don't want to go to any parties. I just want to chill at home with my family and that's it. Um, so I think that's part of it. Yeah, I would say that's probably the main thing I guess people don't know about me. Everyone just
So do
assumes that I'm
you
extroverted.
so when you're in a social situation, do you get energized, or do you generally drain energy? Because usually introverts, like, they drain energy pretty quickly from social situations.
Yeah, masterminds specifically, I, like, need to take a break usually when I'm at them.
Yeah,
Just c
okay.
so I think for me, it depending what the purpose is, like, I can go to, like, a nightclub when I'm in Vegas with my wife and have a great time with a ton of people there because I don't have to interact with all those people. But, like, a
Okay.
mastermind, the whole purpose of mastermind is to network, right? So, like, it takes a lot of energy for me to go just start conversations with people I don't know. So, like, usually
Yeah.
3 o'clock hits at a mastermind, and I'm like, "Man, I just need to go, like, outside for 30 minutes and then come back in and I'll be good." So yeah, it
Mm,
definitely in
mm.
those settings, it drains energy for me.
There's this book called How to Talk to Anyone by Leo Lowndes,
Mhm.
and it's, like, the best question you can ask as an introvert. And I like mastermind events, and the question is, so instead of asking like, "Oh," well, if it's a mastermind you're running, it's different, but if it's like a
Yep.
mastermind, let's say you're a part of or something, um, to get the other person talking a lot is just to ask instead of asking about their job or where they live or the weather or sports, you say, "How do you like to spend your free time?"
Mm.
And then people will tell you the thing they actually wanna talk about, and they'll go
That's a
on
good tip.
about
I'm gonna
skiing
steal
or
that.
on about jujitsu. Yeah, how do you like to spend your free time? And the good thing is, if a person likes their job, then they'll talk about their job.
Yep.
If a person doesn't like their job, they're not stuck talking about their job and giving you short answers. So it works super well. All right, I'm gonna ask you a couple more questions, kind of like personal related, so
I'm
people
in.
get to know you more a little bit better. So, how do you keep your relationship with your family healthy when you're doing so many different business ventures at once, whether it's a new schools to move or the Relentless agency? How do you make sure to keep your relationship healthy at home with your wife and
That's
kids?
such a good question and something I struggled with for years when I was first trying to figure this out and was terrible at. Um, for me, and for a lot of people, I think this is what happens. Hopefully, it doesn't go this way but for us, we got to the point where we almost got a divorce because I was so bad at divvying up the time and being committed on both sides. Luckily, that was like an eye-opening event for me where I was like, I need to like change how I'm doing this shit. So the things that have really been successful for us is like we have scheduled date nights every single week for my wife and I.
Hmm.
Usually once every couple months, we do a out of town date night where we'll just fly someplace local. Like we were just in Vegas this last weekend. Yes, it was Karate Combat, but we made that our date weekend. So we just saw a bunch of shows, hung out,
Mm,
went to some good dinner places. Um, so on the spouse side, that's a big part of it. Our communication has also gotten like so good, where it used to be terrible, where I'd just come home, bitch about work stuff, and then she would voice her opinion about like how the day went with the kids, and then that was it, and we just stopped talking. So for us, we've learned each other's communication styles and what works best. As cheesy as it sounds, love languages are a real thing. So
yep.
like knowing your partner's love language and being able to show up in that role, I think is super helpful. On the business side of things, I think what I've gotten way better at in our relationship is communicating expectations of my work time and work commitment before it actually happens has been super helpful. So like every year before the summit, like I sit down with my wife at dinner and we're like, hey, it's going to be crazy for the next month. We got a bunch of planning we're doing, hotel negotiations, speaker negotiations, all that stuff. So I'm like, I probably won't be home at 5:30 every night. It's probably going to be a little bit more sporadic and all over the place. So um, I've gotten way more aware about just communicating that stuff ahead of time to her. So that way she's fully expected and she's not like texting me if I'm not home, like at the same time that I'm usually on the kids side of things. I think more so than just setting time aside, it's being present when with them. I used to be the dad that would be with my kids and I'm just like, on my phone answering texts and emails like while I'm supposed to be spending time with them. So for me, it was not being present. So I have all my notifications off on my phone when I'm with my kids. So that way I'm not being distracted by my phone or looking at my phone for certain things. If it's an emergency, someone's going to call me anyway, so I don't need to check. And I think like even doing play dates with your kids, like you would set up a date night for your wife, has been super helpful.
Mm,
Like I get so much joy from like yesterday morning I got to go see my youngest, my 4-year-old Miles. He had his like little Christmas concert at school before. So like that fulfilled me so much, just to be able to like be there for events like that where I get to see them like look for their dad in the crowd and wave and all that stuff. So I think
mm,
prioritizing that stuff over work is so important. And also I think when you're a business owner, making sure that the culture reflects family, not necessarily that you're work family, but also that like, hey, we want you guys to prioritize like your health and also your relationships, like just like you would work. So like if we have someone that needs to go off to go visit family for Christmas, like that's cool. Like go take 2 weeks off, spend with your family, a week off, go spend with your family. But then when I do the same thing to go spend with my family, no one in the company looks at it like a bad thing because we always preach like, hey, we want you to nurture those relationships at home. So I just think if your kids have an event or something and or something that you should be there for, like that's the priority over work every time.
that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. All
Yeah.
right, next random question. What's your most expensive piece of clothing?
Ooh. Um, God, I'm gonna
Is it
sound
gonna
so
be the
douchey.
shoes? I was thinking it was gonna be the shoes, but
Yeah, it's
maybe
gonna be a
not.
pair of shoes for sure. Um, I have a couple of different Louboutin shoes that are probably like $1,200 shoes. I have shoes I'm wearing right now are Louis Vuitton. Those ones aren't quite as expensive as the Louboutin. It's funny with shoes
Is
though.
that your favorite luxury item?
I don't even know. I don't like luxury items to begin with, usually. The shoes, like for the summit, is the main reason I bought them is to wear them at the summit, and that's like really it.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
took me so long to buy those shoes. Like I first told myself, I was like, when we have a company doing 50 grand a month, I'm going to buy myself those shoes. And it took us to where we were doing like over $200,000 a month for me to decide to spend $1,000 on a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
So for
Okay,
me, like
cool.
I'm not into fancy cars, not into like designer clothes. I wear mostly like our Relentless stuff or Move stuff like most days of the week. So I don't really spend a whole bunch on clothes.
Okay, cool. All right, last one. Tell me your favorite place you've traveled.
Probably Italy. Italy was my favorite,
Is
I think. We went
why
to
Italy?
Rome, Florence, and Pisa. And Florence was like I thought my favorite place. Like we have a goal of summers in Italy, and it's probably going to be Amalfi Coast or Florence is going to be the goal to spend summers at.
Like every summer you go to the same spot
Well,
or
we'll
in
move
that
around.
general
I
area?
almost want like a vacation home that we Airbnb, like in Italy.
Mm,
So it's just depending, figuring out where my wife and I want to have it if we go that route.
yeah, cool. All right, one more. Um, okay. What's something new you want to try in 2024?
Something new I want to try in 2024. Ooh, that's a good question. Well, new businesses. Will we open up some new schools in 2024? I
Yeah,
know
that
that's sort
doesn't
of the
count.
same stuff I'm doing now.
Nah, it doesn't count.
Want to do another fight in 2024?
Okay,
So it'll be a new person I'm fighting. Um,
a new a Muay Thai fight,
this one will be kickboxing.
kickboxing.
Yep, this one will be kickboxing. I
Cool.
think. So that'll be new. There's my new thing. I'm gonna be doing a kickboxing fight. Uh,
Mm,
yeah, I don't know. I'm speaking at way more events outside the industry in 2024, so I guess that'll be new for me.
okay, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Did you do like Toastmasters or something?
No,
No.
I did exactly what you said earlier. I watched game film, saw how terrible I was at speaking, and then started changing things until I got a little bit better over time.
Mm, okay, great. All right, one more actually. What book has shaped your career the most?
Oh, God, there's so many books.
Yeah, pick one.
I would. God, it's not even a business book. I would say "Relentless" by Tim Grover. If
Ah, I
didn't,
could have guessed that one.
yeah, I
Damn
think anyone could have guessed that
it.
one.
Yep.
Just like the mindset of that, and I grew up worshiping Michael Jordan, so like that goes. I'll say recently though, the one that I think is the biggest effect is David Ogilvy, Confessions of an Advertising Man.
Mm,
That book
classic.
has gotten me way better at communication with my team, communicating the vision consistently. Um, to the fact where I do like a weekly memo to them that's just like really written for me, but nuggets that they can take for them out of it. Um, that book is low key like so good and I think super underrated. Probably because there's no
Mm.
audiobook version of it, but it's worth getting and reading. There's a lot of gold in that book. And he was in the
Mm.
70s and had a $55 million a year company in the 70s with 19 clients. Like
Wow, damn.
that's pretty badass. He lived in a
Yeah,
castle.
I've had that on my shelf for a while, but I haven't opened it.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's
Um,
a good read.
so thank you so much for being on here. This was awesome. If someone wants to either get agency services or they have a question, how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, any social channel, it's Adam Kifer, Kifer. If you just search that, message me. I answer all my own stuff, respond to all my own comments. So you will get me and not like some bot. I got you.
Cool. Thank you so much for being on here. My name is Matthew Brenner. You can, if you have any questions, you can email me, Matthew@wdojo.com. If you ask me for a game film review, I'm happy to send you one. Or if you want to find me on Instagram, it's at Black Belt Brenner 1. Thanks, guys.